And also, good evening to you who are outside. I don't want you to feel separated out there. I would say this, just by way of introduction and mindfulness. I've got an Indian idol up here with me right now, so mindfulness is on my mind. But it's only a joke. It's only a joke. By way of mindfulness, this is great. It's great that we're here worshiping together, and some of us are in here, and some of us are out there, and we're together. And it's great that we can be together worshiping together. I would maybe just make one suggestion, just to be mindful of our circumstances. When services are over, so that we don't do anything at all whatsoever to foster any kind of division between us. Let's visit out there. There's no reason why we can't be together in our time of visiting. And so it's just a matter of saying, okay, what can we all do to do the very best that we can? And I think that's an easy fix. We can easily do that one. You don't have to. I'm not laying down any kind of commands. If you want to stay in here, then stay in here. But let's be mindful, is all I'm saying. So what we did last time, I wanted to say this also before we get started. This group of young people up here, you guys can make comments in class. This is like you're not, this because this is a class setting with lots of other people up here. I will never forget, probably in my whole life, when we were doing our Zoom Bible study and Regan piped up and made a comment on the Zoom study. So you're welcome. Raise your hand, get my attention. We'll take all the participation and input that we can get in this. We're talking about idolatry. I don't know what we are. I think we're 3 lessons into this now, and we talked about idolatry as bad, obviously. In our last class, obviously God hates idolatry, but I wanted a full lesson devoted to the abject hatred that God has for idols and other gods. God says, I will not share my throne. In the same way that we husbands say, I will not share my wife, or you wives say, I will not share my husband, God says, I will not share my people. And so this, as I was thinking, I put this up on my table when I was preparing so that I wouldn't forget to bring it because of the next point. And it was sitting there, and I'm thinking about, hey, God hates idols and all these other gods. So I turned it around. And then I sat there and I looked at it for a little while, and I thought that's not enough. So I set it face down, because that's what happened in Samuel anyway. The false god fell face down, but this is not something that God is okay with. He says, you will have no other gods before me. Worship only the one true creator, God of heaven and earth. Here's the problem, though, at least as far as I can tell. This is easy to identify. I'm holding it in my hand right now. I can look at it and touch it and feel it and say, this is a representative Indian god that people will set and literally look at and bow down to worship as if they're connecting to a god through this idol. It almost could not be simpler than this. I'm going to put this away now, really because I'm trying to take this subject very seriously, but this is easy. What is not so easy is to identify the other gods that we may be worshiping, or maybe idols that we may be bowing down to, because they are not tangible things that we hold and see and bow ourselves before. In many cases, these other gods that we're serving are conceptual ideas. And so, how do I identify that? What am I supposed to do? And so what I want to do tonight, this first section, I think this one is, maybe it gets a little deeper than what you would just initially guess, but what we're going to do tonight is we're going to talk about idol identification. How can I identify those things in my life that may be gods or idols. And I'm taking this really slow. I'm not going so far as to say, okay, this is a god. Money, success, achievement, sexual fulfillment. I'm not ready to do that yet. What I'm doing is I'm asking a series of questions. When we're finished tonight, this board is going to be full of a series of questions that we ask ourselves. This whole lesson is about the question that we ask ourselves to try to identify the thing in our life that may be a god. And you'll see how we're going to do this. We're going to go through a handful of passages to say, well, you know what? I'm not going to tell you how we're going to do it because I'm not sure that I can. I'm going to show you how we're going to do it. So just stick with me on this one. Let's start with worship. First of all, in Romans chapter 1 and verse 25, this is the easiest one. If you're thinking about other gods or idols, Romans 1:25 really is the classical passage besides the Ten Commandments to describe idolatry. Gentiles who did not have the Word of God, this is what they did. They exchanged the truth about God for a lie and worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator. And so you can, if you want, you can go ahead and start talking about, some tangible things that maybe we worship. This one's a little harder for me, though. Because worship is something that I think of that I reserve for God. We come together here and we sing together like we just did. We were worshiping. I can identify that. It's a little harder to identify worshiping another God if I'm not intentionally coming before this thing to bow down and worship it. What would you say about worshiping, and what does worshiping look like? How can we identify something that we might worship? Maria?
I think you first have to define, to some degree, what worship is.
Okay.
Worship is not just limited to us coming together, assembling together. There's other things that go into worshiping God, and that's where we get into trouble.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
That you just show, we're not down that road, but we definitely can have tendencies down the other road.
Yeah, so let's do it. That's the next thing in the note here. The first thing we have to do is define worship. What is worship? What does it look like? Go to Google, type define worship into the search box, and this is what you get. The feeling or expression of reverence, define reverence, deep respect. The feeling or expression of reverence or deep respect or adoration. What is the thing that I revere, that I adore, that I deeply respect in the way that I might with God? Anybody ever heard of David Foster Wallace? Probably not. He's an author, used to be a college teacher and an author. He's really big in the world of postmodern stuff. He writes things that nobody knows what he's saying. And it's like, you read this thing, it's like, I have no idea what he just said. He's a genius. He killed himself. But right before he killed himself, he did, I guess right before, a couple years before he killed himself, he did a commencement speech at a college. And I'm going to talk more about his commencement speech in our next class. But I couldn't hold off on this one. There's two parts of this, two different slides with this. He's speaking to college kids. He's a person who's very mindful of himself and the world around him. His whole thing is intentional thinking. What am I doing? Why am I doing it? Listen to what he says. You get to decide what to worship because there's something else that's weird but true. In the day-to-day trenches of adult life, there is actually no such thing as atheism. There is no such thing as not worshiping. Everybody worships. The only choice we get is what to worship. But the insidious thing about these forms of worship is not that they're evil or sinful, it's that they're unconscious. They are default settings. That's the whole point of this class. We are worshiping, but it's unconscious. We don't even know that we're worshiping. So how are we going to talk about worship as a thing when it's our default setting and we don't even know we're doing it? It's a default setting. They are the kind of worship you just gradually slip into day after day, getting more and more selective about what you see and how you measure value without ever being fully aware that that's what you're doing. That really is the problem. This is easy. I can identify this God. What I may be worshiping in my life right now is not so identifiable and easy. Or maybe it is. It's not for me. Maria?
I agree with his comment about not being, there's actually no atheism, because if you think about it, unless something is wrong with your mind, and I'm not being cute or sarcastic when I say that, you're going to hold something in reverence. If you go back to your definition, you're going to worship. You're going to hold something in high regard. Right? You know, whether it's your well-being, whether it's the Lord, whether it's that Maserati, your job. Unless you are unconscious or something's physically wrong, I think everybody is going, because that's how God designed us.
Everybody holds something in reverence and high regard. And
this default setting, I don't know if I so much buy that, because I think a lot of times that's one of the tools Satan uses, because we know one of Satan's biggest, largest tools is deception, and I think and emotion, and I think he plays on our subconscious, our unconscious, things that we may not so easily or readily recognize, and we'll use them for his benefit. Because I mean, the reason I just, the unconscious and default, to me that sounds like you're not making an active choice. You're not making a conscious choice. And I believe that God, one of the reasons he gave us free will is so that we are conscious beings. We're not the robots. We're not just blind faith accepting God.
Yeah.
He gave us minds. He gave us choice. And he expects us to use it to serve him. But if we don't, you know, he's
Yeah.
not going to force us.
so, yeah, I don't think that we're saying something different. It's just that I need to fill up this screen with my explanation first.
Oh, and I'm not trying to be, I'm just saying.
No, right. But it is a conscious choice, but we may not realize that we're making the conscious choice. Unconscious. That's what he's saying. Did you have something, Dave? No? Okay. Anything else on worship? I think it will become more clear if you give me a couple seconds. So here's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to look at different words. Yeah? Different words and different ideas about how to identify this thing. And so the second way is not only to look at the word worship, but to look at the word serve. And here's how I get here. In Exodus chapter 20 and verse 5, this is where you look at the Ten Commandments. God says, I am the Lord your God. And then in verse 5, you shall not bow down, worship. You shall not bow down to them. And then he says, or serve them. Serving the false god is stated on par with worshiping the false god. So we have another word right now to help us to try to identify this thing that's out there that maybe it's hard to say. This is easy, right? Worship. This is easy. If I'm putting this little tangible thing up and bowing down, I'm worshiping that. Super easy. Maybe it would be easier for some people to think of it not as worshiping something, but serving something. Look at Matthew chapter 4. You see, I'm going to give you some more data on this one. We'll look at some data and then we will try to make some application and ask our questions on this one. When the devil was tempting Jesus in the wilderness, the third temptation in Matthew chapter 4 and verse 8, again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. And he said, all these I will give to you if you will fall down and worship me. Worship, right? It's all yours if you worship me. But then look at what Jesus said in response. In verse 10, Jesus said, begone, Satan, for it is written, he quotes Deuteronomy 6:13, you shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve. Maybe our question is not, what do I worship? Maybe our question is, what do I serve? Who am I working for in this life? What am I working for in this life? If you want some more data, in my Bible software, I have a really cool tool that I use a lot. Ed uses it too. Ed, try this one. This is how you do it. You type the word near in all caps. It's called a proximity search. And so what you can do is you can say, I want to search the Bible for the word worship. And every time in whatever version, the ESV, the word serve is found within 48 characters of one another. So you don't have to just know that they're right close to each other. In the Bible, there are 26 verses where you find worshiping and serving listed together. Deuteronomy 11:6 is an example. Take care lest your heart be deceived and you turn aside and serve other gods and worship them. It's like a synonym. Or there's 9 different times where you see the word bow and worship. Bow and serve. Don't bow down to them or serve them. It's the exact same concept. And so, is this helpful at all? Think out loud. This is supposed to be a class setting, so this is think out loud time. Is it more helpful for you to think about not what do I worship, but rather to think about what do I serve? Is that easier? Are we tapping into anything more in your life, to use the word serve, than worship? I'll give you more words. I'll fill up the screen with words, but does that one help? And if you've got, oh yeah, this is what I'm thinking about that, I would love to hear it. Here are some ID questions, if you want some help identifying this sort of thing. When you think of religion, when I think of religion, religion is something that revolves around the 3 big questions, right? Where did I come from? Where am I going? Why am I here? The why am I here relates in my head to the what do you serve? What is my purpose? What is my function? What do you live for? What is the thing in your life that is fundamental to your life's meaning or significance or identity? What is the thing that identifies you or your sense of self-worth? I am worthwhile as a human being because what is that thing? That to me fits into this category of what do you serve?
Couldn't you look at it as what do you give your energy to?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Couldn't you look at it also as what you give your energy to or where your energy
Yes.
is? Because I can really click in if I use those words.
Oh, yeah.
More than worship or even service.
I'm going to repeat it so everybody can benefit from your comment, Lisa. Wouldn't this make sense if we said, what do you put your energy into? What am I serving? What am I doing? What am I working for? We're just trying to come up with questions that will help us to fix a problem that's in our life, a serious problem in our life, but one that most of us don't even sometimes know is a problem. That's what we're trying to do here, is just to try and identify these things. Yep, Mark?
Hey, Steve Shetlaw on Facebook says, maybe we work backwards from the example of idolatry we're given in the New Testament. Colossians 3, verse 5. Says, covetousness is idolatry, so whatever we give to for money or possessions, if we're covetous, that's what we're supposed to be giving to or for God. In fact, we generally recognize that service is more important than worship. What we do, how we spend our time is what matters.
Yeah. Good. Thanks, Steve, for that. I still am kind of in awe. I'm not quite over what we're doing just yet. That there are people all over participating in this Bible study in different ways. It's an amazing opportunity that we have. Look at 2 Kings 17. We're going to add to the list. 2 Kings 17. We're going to get several. this is going to be new for us this time in 2 Kings chapter 17, because we're going to have duplicates, but when we come to the duplicate word, I'm going to at least acknowledge that it's there, but I'm not going to address the same thing that we've already addressed. So let me give you an example. 2 Kings 17:35, the Lord made a covenant with them and commanded them, "You shall not fear other gods." One. That's going to be our next word, by the way. I'll throw that. Oh, hold on. There's your ID questions. Sorry about that. Next. You shall not fear other gods. We'll talk about that, but let me show you how we're going to proceed through this study. Or bow yourselves to them. We already talked about that with worship, so we're not going to do that one again. Or serve them. We already talked about that one, so we're not going to do it again. But then he says, or sacrifice to them. And we haven't done sacrifice yet. So next, as we ask the question, the identification question, what do I serve? What gods in my life maybe are competing to share God's throne in my life? The first thing from 2 Kings chapter 17:35 is, what do you fear? And this is where Maria's approach is going to be a good one. What does it mean to fear God, or to fear a small case G God in the Bible when you see the word fear? What does that mean? Can we define it? Synonym? I see some of you looking at you. Jessica, go ahead. Sorry. Respect. Yes, I think I've got that one on here also. So maybe the question would not necessarily be, what do I fear? Because that's kind of a religious word too that's a little bit difficult. What do I respect? This one may be helpful. Deuteronomy chapter 4. If you would like to get your bearings here, Deuteronomy 5 is where Moses gives the 10 Commandments for a second time. So Deuteronomy 4 is leading up to telling about the 10 Commandments. So we're talking about Israel coming to Sinai and meeting God for the very first time on the mountain with the fire and the smoke and all of that stuff. Deuteronomy 4 verses 9 through 12. Only take care, this is what God is remembering and saying to his people because of their experience at the mountain. Verse 9, only take care, keep your soul diligently, lest you forget the things that your eyes have seen, and lest they depart from your heart all the days of your life. Make them known to your children and your children's children, how on the day that you stood before the Lord your God at Horeb, the Lord said to me, gather the people to me, that I may let them hear my words, so that they may learn to fear me all the days that they live on the earth, and that they may teach their children so. And you came near and stood at the foot of the mountain, while the mountain burned with fire to the heart of heaven, wrapped in darkness, cloud, and gloom. And the Lord spoke to you out of the midst of the fire, and you heard the sounds of the Lord, but you saw no form. What were the people's response to meeting God at Sinai in this description back in Exodus 19? How did they respond to that? They were terrified. Please don't talk to us anymore, God. Talk to Moses, and have Moses talk to us. And so while I would take the word respect easily. I think respect is a great word here. I think we should probably not minimize the word in the aspect of fear. It is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God. He's our judge after all, and we're guilty after all. That's scary, Jonathan.
As far as fear goes, just something that I've been thinking about recently, and just as an anecdote to explain where I'm coming from, is rule following. And why I think we need to be people who are good citizens, people who are good people in society as Christians. I think at times, and I'll explain why I think this rule following gets in the way of So the other day I was talking to my supervisor about some stuff that was religious on lunch break, right? Well, we were having an important conversation. He was talking about baptism and stuff, but I have a 30-minute lunch break. And at the end of the break, I was like, I got to get out of here. It's the end of my break. I don't want to get in trouble. Well, that's not important. That's like, I walked away from that, and I was like, why did I do that? Because that was dumb. And then later that day, same day, before I left work, I heard second shift coming, and I guess somebody got in an argument while they were having their sergeant meeting. And one of the leads, I overheard him yelling, "No, here we don't talk about politics or religion. We don't talk about that here." And I'm like, I understand why they make that rule, but I don't care about that. That's a dumb rule. And sometimes we've got to be, you can call it subversive. But at the end of the day, they need to ask themselves, are they going to stand in the way of God?
Yeah.
Because that's standing in the way of God.
Don't let the perfect summary. Don't let fear stand in the way of your service to God. How about this one? This is the one whenever I said this one to Becky. We were laying down in bed and I said, what about this? And she looked at me and this is the one. Now I'm guessing that probably of all the things on the list that we're going to do today, hopefully only one of them will get you. This is the one that got us when we were talking to it. How about this? Thinking about fear. What thing, if you lost it, would cause you to lose the will to live, meaning significance or worth? What thing in your life, and I should say created thing, because all things are created but God, what created thing, what aspect in your world, if you lost it, would cause you to lose all sense of who you are and what you do? What thing is that? I'll just tell you, it's kind of an open thing. I try not to be too closed off, but this is going to be tough because my idol, or the thing I am tempted to serve more than God, is sitting right in front of me right now. This is a harder conversation than it seems, I think. What thing in your life will you fight the hardest to hold on to? See how that relates to what you're talking about with fear? I don't want to say it at work because what if I lose my job? What is the fear factor? Maria, you had something you wanted to do there?
I would think be your spouse or your child or children.
It's tough. So next he says in verse, where were we? I lost our 2 Kings 17:35. Don't fear other gods. Don't bow down to other gods. Don't serve other gods. Lastly, don't sacrifice to other gods. That one might sound ridiculous. Of course I haven't sacrificed to another god. What I think of when I think of sacrifices, in terms of sacrificing to other gods, even though the scripture is full of the concept of sacrifices, burnt offerings and all of these different offerings that you read about, sacrifices in the Bible, and even Jesus' sacrifice, central to who we are and the forgiveness of our sins. When I think about sacrifice in the Bible, I think about a group of people who sacrificed their kids to other gods. It was commanded against in the Old Testament. Don't be like the nations and sacrifice your children to whatever other god is mentioned, Molech. There's a couple passages. I'm tempted. I'm not going to do it now. I'm going to run out of time tonight. Ezekiel 23 and verses 36 through 39 describes the children of God and how they prostituted themselves out of a relationship with God, and one of the things that they did is they sacrificed their children. I would never sacrifice my children. Those people are pagan savages to sacrifice their children to another god, and yet I have known and do know plenty of men who have sacrificed their children on the altar of serving their career. What? Women do. Women too. I'm a man, so I will criticize my own species. My own kind. Women too. I have been thinking about this one an awful lot. You know, let me tell you this. I've got the police department over here is really good to me. They give me a really nice shirt. It's got my name on it. Embroidered. It's nice. I like the shirt. Feels nice. I got a mug last week with the laser engraving on it. It's got the Ellisville police badge and it says Chaplain Ryan Boyer on it. I love my mug. Got this bracelets, rubber bracelets that say things like I got a gator, since this is what you give people as gifts in the world that we live in, face mask. Here's a face mask for you. I got this really cool face mask, and I like it a lot, and it's blue, and it's got the flag with the thin blue line and EPD across the top, and I like it a lot. And I won't wear that here, even how much I like it. And it's not that I have any one person specifically in mind or one group of people in line. But we live in a world, maybe this has always been the world, but we live in a time that's right directly in front of me where people who are my brothers and sisters in the Lord would sacrifice their relationship with me based upon a political opinion. It's not just sacrificing to God in terms of taking your kids and cutting their head off and lighting them on fire. What is the thing that you sacrifice for? What is the thing that you sacrifice to? I don't know how. Maybe this one gets to you in a way that the other ones don't. The last one here. No, this is not the last one. This is another one. Deuteronomy 4 and verse 19. Oh, look, I put them together. They're close together here. Deuteronomy 4, I'm still there. In verse 19, beware lest you raise your eyes to heaven, and when you see the sun and the moon and the stars and all the host of heaven, you be drawn away and bow down to them and serve them, things that the Lord your God has allotted to all the peoples under the whole heaven. So we're not going to talk about bowing down to those things or serving those things, but he says, when you raise your eyes to the heaven, people throughout history have worshipped the sun and the moon and the stars and all of the celestial beings. And what God is saying in Deuteronomy 4, in the words that he uses here, is don't raise your eyes to the heavens and be drawn away after the things that you're looking at. And how many of you, this is what's on my mind right now, since Luke just turned 16 and driving is in our world, how many of you with your young 15, 16, 23-year-old, how many of you have had the conversation, your car goes where your eyes are? And so if you're driving down the road and you're looking over here, how often do you find yourself swerving in the direction that your eyes are looking? This is a lesson that all mountain bikers have learned the hard way. Right, Ryan? Your bike goes where your eyes look. Don't look at the thing you're scared of running into, or one thing is guaranteed to happen. You're going to hit that thing or fall off of that thing. You go where you look. And so Moses says in Deuteronomy 4 here, with the sun and the moon and the stars and celestial beings who people worshipped as gods, don't gaze longingly at that thing. And listen to what he says. He says, and it draw you away from God, like a bug to a light. What is the thing that you gaze longingly upon that draws your eye away from God? Dave?
This is something that can very easily transition to a man's draw toward a woman. When I think about Job and how he said, I have made a covenant with my eyes, how then could I gaze at a virgin or a maiden? And then throughout the beginning chapters of Proverbs, how wisdom is described as a woman to seek after, while another woman is also described as a person that is sought after, but she draws people to death.
Yeah. Yeah. And how, I mean, it's a biblical thing. You go after what you're looking for. And so in Job's case, I've made a covenant with my eyes not to look at those things so as to keep me where I need to be.
And in that sense, I've heard women tell me they've asked a husband, why do you look at other women? And the explanation was, well, it's like looking at other cars, which I thought was a very sad illustration. Because what I think is happening is there's this compound effect of if you're looking once, then you're going to look again, and look again, and look again. And even if it's just looking, it's for the sake of looking that you are being consumed by it.
Yeah. Good comments, Dave. Specifically, I want to make sure that everybody can hear the things that you listed and get our minds running, because in later classes we're going to start listing specific things. Looking at other women. You didn't mention this one, but looking at other women in places like the internet. Looking at cars. Looking at that yacht that I have to have. Whatever it is. Whatever the question is, maybe this is the one that will help you to identify that thing that you serve, worship, bow down to in your life. What is the thing that you gaze longingly upon that draws your eye away from the Lord? Calvin?
Part of the aspect of fearing or respecting something is the accurate knowledge of the consequences of not fearing or respecting it. For instance, fire. If you don't fear or respect fire, and you say, well, I'm going to just stick my hand in it,
Yeah.
you're going to learn the consequences of that.
Yes. And let's keep going. If you don't fear and respect fire, you're going to get burned, right? If you don't fear and respect the Lord, I suppose we say the same thing. You will be burned. If you fear and respect other gods, that's next Sunday night. What do other gods get us? I'm going to spend a whole class saying, what do we get for it? Besides a whole lot of nothing, what do we get for it? Just to kind of give you a heads up where we're going. Jeremiah 8. Go to Jeremiah 8 with me, please. Sorry, that sounded bossy. Please, would you turn to Jeremiah 8 with me? Did you have one, Lisa?
You say, what do we get if we think about other gods? Is that what you said?
Yeah, we'll just talk about what are the benefits, what are the consequences of pursuing other gods, and sharing God's throne in our life with something else. That's what we're doing.
Much confusion.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just have a side question on the first one, on the worshiping part. Like, people worship a cross in their car, or a wooden cross, or whatever that's man-made. Is that considered idolatry?
Yeah, I think Nathan's question is, I think you're thinking about the idea of having a cross or a rosary or some other thing that you hold that you bow down to or speak to or worship or something like that. I think that we may spend a class. I haven't decided if what you're looking for, the word here is iconoclasm, and there's a huge debate throughout history about how this works. And what I think I'm going to do in that class is, I think we're going to do that in Deuteronomy 32, where the children of Israel created the golden calf and were worshiping Yahweh, the one true creator God of heaven and earth, by means of some created thing, which is not okay. And so the question in that class will be, what is the created thing by which we worship Yahweh? And we'll talk about that specifically. Yeah. Good thought process though, Nathan. I like where your head is. Look at Jeremiah 8. Let me just see where I am in my notes. I think I'm going to have to hurry through some of these last ones. Jeremiah 8 and verses 1 and 2. At that time declares the Lord, the bones of the kings of Judah and the bones of its officials and the bones of the priests and the bones of the prophets and the bones of the inhabitants of Jerusalem shall be brought out of their tombs. Got it? Jeremiah is describing a day where we're going to take the bones of all the dead people who have lived before us, and we're going to take those bones, and what are we going to do with them in verse 2? They're going to spread them out before the sun and the moon and all the host of heaven, which they have loved and served, which they have gone after, and which they have sought and worshipped. And they shall not be gathered or buried. They shall be as dung on the surface of the ground. There are lots of different descriptors here. And so one of the next questions, the very first one in this list. What is the thing that you love? This is a biblical approach to this one because Jesus said, what is the first command? Say it for me, please, someone. To love the Lord your God with all of your heart. What is the thing that you love more than that? Easy, maybe not easy to identify, easy enough question to approach our subject. God says, I am the king who sits on the throne, nobody else. Love me, who do you love more? The next one he mentions is served. That one is one that we've talked about already. The next one that he mentions is going after something. This word is used a couple different times. I'll just refer to this one because we'll talk about it later on. In 1 Kings 18, this is the great showdown between Elijah and the prophets of Baal. And Elijah says in the great showdown to Israel, make your choice. Which God are you going to serve? Are you going to serve Yahweh or are you going to serve Baal? Make your choice. And what he's saying there relates to this word. Which way are you going to go? What thing are you going to go after? So often the words sacrifice and choice, I think, are synonyms. What are you going to sacrifice for? What are you going to choose? Which way are you going to go? Another one that he mentioned here in this text in Jeremiah 8 is, and the things that you sought. What is the thing that you're seeking? Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. Seek first. There it is again. Only God first on the throne. Nothing else. First. What is the thing that you seek before him? And so maybe some ID questions. What are the lockdown dates on your calendar that won't move for anything?
Christmas.
What? Somebody say something?
Christmas.
Christmas. Well, Christmas isn't moving for anything because it's on our calendar. What I'm more describing is what is the Super Bowl. When the Cardinals go to Kansas City and play the Royals. That is a game that we try to watch. What is the lockdown date on your calendar that you say, I don't care what else is happening in the world, that is a date on my calendar that's not budging? It may help you to identify this answer to the question, what are you seeking? What is the thing that you're seeking? Maybe it's not the lockdown date on your calendar. What is the thing in your budget that won't budge? No matter what, this is what I'm spending my money on. Some people. You see, this is a very individual class.
I was going to say, before you said budget, to the honor of our group, I think we are all extremely flexible for one another, and that we held in high regard each other as a priority. So if something were to come up that is on lockdown right then, and it's not something that, like our schedules are so open because we care so much for one another.
Yeah.
If there is something on lockdown, it is unlocked and moved up, and we become priority.
Because seek first the Lord is there, right? And so to help answer the question is, what is the thing that you won't budge for anything? If it's not the Lord, then maybe that's your idol. Maybe that's your God. It'll be different for all of us, Morgan.
I was just thinking some things that we serve or have as idols are to our own detriment. Sometimes idols are negative. Things we serve that are, like we can't forgive our parents, or we can't stop mourning this, or grieving this, or being self-conscious about this. Like all of these horrible things that we idolize and put, or fear, like horrible things that we put way ahead of God. I don't know. We put so much attention into them, and they're so big in our hearts and in our minds that we think they are greater than God sometimes. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you can fit that into like a question, but
Yeah. You did a really good job in the way that you made your comment. I don't know if you noticed it, but you basically just went down the list and said every single word.
okay.
I mean, you said the thing that we serve, the thing that we idolize, the thing that we worship, the thing that we see, all this stuff. That's what is it? I wish that I could stand up here in this class and say this is the thing, but that's not going to work. This class is to help you do what you need to do, hopefully. One more thing, and then I'll be done. I'm sorry, I know that I've gone long, and I apologize for that, but I don't want to have to come back to this in another one. 1 Samuel chapter 15, this is where Saul refuses to do everything that Samuel told him to do, and here are the famous verses in verses 22 and 23 that Samuel said to Saul. And Samuel said, "Has the Lord as great delight in burnt offering and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and listen than the fat of rams." But look, that's the one that's highlighted in my Bible. But look at the next one in this context. "For rebellion is as the sin of divination, and presumption is as iniquity and idolatry. Because you, Saul, have rejected the word of the Lord, he has rejected you from being king." What God is saying to Saul is, you rejected God. You put something else before the Lord and what he said to do. And that is like idolatry. He specifically says it. It's comparable. And so this might be the question for you. What is the thing that you will reject the Lord for? Could that be the God that you serve that we need to target and identify? We'll just go through this here one more time real quick. If you are outside, I have the song on the board right now, 549. If you want to open up your songbooks, we'll sing one more song of invitation in just a second. But think through these. I have one more thing real quick, because I want to say this to you, and this is just a side thought. One of the things that we're really good at, I don't want to put this on you. One of the things that I'm really good at is knowing your flaws. I could go through this room right now. Probably not you, too. You're not here enough. I could probably go through this room, and at least in my mind I could say, here's your problem, here's your problem, here's your problem. This is your God, this is your idol. I think I can see those things. My problem is I can't see my things. But here's the thing. Maybe you can. Maybe every single person in this room looks at me and says, hands down, this is his idol. Maybe you see it. You would be my friend if you let me know that. And if I say something to you on this subject, it is not because I'm trying to hurt you or be critical to you, but because I want us all to be on the same page doing the same thing. Loving and serving the one true creator God of heaven and earth, who deserves 100% of the throne, and not to share it with anyone else. If you're here tonight and you're not a Christian, that's what the invitation is always about. If you are ready to die to yourself, to say, not even my life, I'm going to die to myself and take that old dead person and bury him under the waters of baptism. And when I come up out of that watery grave from this day forward, my life is wholly, singly devoted to God in heaven. If you're ready to do that now, come forward. Make your needs known as we stand and sing the invitations.